even as the England team are wowing world cricket with baseball, an independent report has found that racism, sexism, classism, elitism were widespread and deep-rooted in English cricket. It's a 317-page report from the Independent Commission for Equity in Cricket, which took evidence from more than 4,000 players, coaches, administrators, and fans. Among those who've given this evidence were England men's Test captain Ben Stokes, women's captain Heather Knight, former men's captain Joe Root, World Cup winning skipper Owen Morgan, and Azeem Rafiq, the former Yorkshire player and racism whistleblower. The report found racism in cricket is not confined to pockets or a few bad apples, but is widespread, and it's a serious problem. The report also found that 87% of people of Pakistani and Bangladeshi heritage who responded to its survey, along with the 82% of Indians and 75% of black respondents, they said they had experienced discrimination, they had experienced racism. Cricket is elitist and exclusionary in England, with private schools and old boys networks and cliques that permeate the game to the exclusion of many. All of this has been written in that report. One Asian recreational player told how he and a teammate had been called terrorists, and after complaining was accused of attempting to defame the club in question. A former professional player said, as a black cricketer, I had to be, quote unquote, I had to be 3 times better than my white counterparts. A drinking and puerile lads culture across the sport that has put women at risk of unwanted attention and acts as a barrier to the inclusion of Muslim community. This is not all. The report also criticizes the board, ECB, for failing to recognize the extent of racism in cricket until more recently when, if you all remember, Azeem Rafiq came out and talked about his ordeal with Yorkshire club as a player. So this is a damning report. I want reactions from both of you. I have 2 things that stand out for me. First of all, hats off to Azeem Rafiq for continuing the fight despite many challenges that he faced. Secondly, are you at all shocked at the level of racism that this report has found? I mean, it is deep-rooted, not just institutional, they say. It is structural. It's not a few bad apples. It's a culture in which it's okay to discriminate, in which it's okay to be racist. Kushan?
Well, I'll tell you a small story. A very famous England opener who was also a very notable and very well accepted commentator had once made a comment that had I blacked my face, I would have been knighted long before. And then he had to apologize. He issued an apology. You'll find the quote unquote, if you Google it, the name I don't want to name on a television show, but this happened. So this is what you call casual racism. Just like there is casual sexism, there is casual racism. That has been prevalent in England. Like a friend of mine who has been an India player, currently resides in England, does a bit of coaching also. And I asked him after the report came out, the examining report, that do you face racism? He said that not exactly racism. What you face is a condescending tone. What you face is a patronizing attitude towards people who are not white. So this is a problem. This is a problem. It has a social history attached to it, Neha. It cannot just go away or wiped out in a day. Ollie Robinson, for all his faults, had to pay very little price for the kind of comments he made. He was sorry for the comment he has made, but has he changed as a person? We do not know whether he has changed as a person. Yes, you feel bad for him that the Aussies are taking some piss out of him, but at the same time, what Ollie Robinson told Usman Khwaja, was it something great? And Usman Khwaja, mind it, is an Australian of Pakistani descent.
And has
So
already
you can
spoken
understand
about.
from where it's coming from.
Yeah, and Usman Khwaja has spoken about racism himself. So it's not just
Usman
limited
Khwaja has a curry muncher,
yeah, yeah.
used to be called.
Okay, now this is what England's Test captain Ben Stokes has to say on the report. This was the pre-match press conference. Listen in and we'll come back.
To the people involved in the game who have been made to feel unwelcome or unaccepted in the past, I'm deeply sorry to hear of your experiences. Cricket is a game that needs to celebrate diversity on all fronts, because without diversity, this game would not be where it is at today. As a sport, we need to learn from past mistakes and do all we can to make people feel safe and be themselves at every level. I have been an England player since 2011, and I feel very fortunate to have been a part of some incredibly diverse teams and love how everyone has a different story to tell. We must go further and be more inclusive and diverse, because the game I love and the millions worldwide love should be enjoyed without fear of discrimination or judgment, whether that be due to your upbringing, race or gender. As I said earlier, everyone has a different story to tell. I am Ben Stokes, born in New Zealand, a state-educated pupil who dropped out of school at 16 with 1 GCSE in PE. I needed help with the spelling and grammar in this speech, and I am currently sitting here as the England men's Test captain. It is clear there is so much more the game has to do, and as players, we really want to be a part of that to ensure that this is truly a sport for everyone.
Well, the apology from England's Test captain. Now, Jamie, it's a wake-up call, really. I mean, the fact, I mean, and some of the things in that report, if you read it, as an Asian, you feel, you feel angry, you feel frustrated, but I can't imagine what some of the players have had to go through. And this is not just any report. 4,000 people have been interviewed. They've given evidence. It includes former captains, current captain, women's captain. Not just racism, there is sexism, elitism. It is a sport meant for, their private schools, boys who are playing in private schools. I mean, there are, I was reading about how, which are the 2 schools that are allowed to play at Lord's, which is Harrow and Eton. So, there is classism there. There is so much of discrimination in every way. And it's time that England put this in order. I mean, they can play all the baseball that they want, but this is horrific. And the fact that ECB didn't do anything about it for the longest time means how systemic this has been, how institutionalized this has been.
Absolutely. Just to get it out of the way, and Kushan knows a lot about this as well, Lord's is an extremely overrated place to go to. There's a bit of a romantic and nostalgia attached to it. So the first time you go there, you're sort of overawed, but then you realize it's a very snooty, stuck-up, elite, white gentleman's place. Moving on, yes, it is, Maya. It's a wake-up call, and it should surprise very, very few people that it's happened. I remember the first time, a couple of years ago when all this started to come out, I'm thinking, this is the system in which countless West Indian players came through, and they rarely spoke about it openly. We haven't heard much. That just says what steel they were made of, how intimidating they were, probably how respected and feared they were. There were not a lot of Indians, a lot of Pakistanis, a lot of Asians have come through. Spent a lot of time, more so back in the 80s and the 70s. So when you compare that to what's happening now, and you said, 4,000 people, I just knocked off some of the key points before coming here. Said half of the respondents experience discrimination. Racism is entrenched. Women are marginalized and routinely experience sexism. Little or no focus on addressing class barriers. Complaint systems are confusing and not fit for purpose. Equity, diversity, and inclusion requires significant improvements. These are the 6 main takeaways from this very damning report. And again, just coming back to what Ben Stokes was saying, you hope and you wish that's sincere, but this is, of course, the era of PR, and I see this as a firefighting exercise. And Ben Stokes mentioned the England team. I don't think the England team is anywhere near problematic the way that the structure is, starting from the school level to the university level, the club level, and county level, because the majority of the complaints have come from that. You're not hearing complaints about people playing for the England team, but it's what has taken an Asian origin player or a West Indian Caribbean origin player, even a South African coal player, what has taken them to the top. what they've gone through, and then you think about the women cricketers and how bad it is for them. So it's definitely a wake-up call, and let's hope, because yes, it is from the outside. I mean, yes, I've been to England 3 times to cover cricket. Kushan's probably been more. You've been there, Maya. It's like Kushan said, it's more a cultural thing. It's not just cricket, it's in their system. And I think one aspect which does not get discussed is the drinking culture within England, and especially in the sporting arena. Maya, you and I have a common friend. He did a sports MBA from University of Loughborough. He played with Sam Billings, a couple other names. He said even at his level, and this is a sweet, well brought up, polite lad, he's a lad when he was there as a student about 14, 15 years ago. He said that it's just mad. Like it's 5 o'clock, and all these guys who slog their rear ends off in the nets, against quality bowling machines, they're off getting sloshed, and 4 hours later they're all staggering out of the pub. So I think a lot of it just comes from that cultural aspect. And you put 15 sporting jocks together with copious amounts of alcohol, not hard to see that one person who's not your typical white player in that room could become the target. So it's just a very sad and a very dark time the English cricket is going through.
Absolutely. Okay. This is Azeem Rafiq. He is reacting to this report. Remember, he was the whistleblower. He was one of those players who came out and spoke openly about all that he had to endure and what he went through. He also spoke about how this is not a one-off thing and it's not his experience. He knows many people who've experienced exactly the same kind of discrimination that he has when he was playing for his county club, Yorkshire. Listen into what he has to say.
Today's report, hopefully, it's a voice of all the 4,000 people that have built up the courage to speak to the Commission. And even those suffering in silence, I just hope that this provides some sort of closure for them. Yeah, I think, look, the thing that stuck out to me was, I think as a starting point, look, the apology was, I think, one of them. And for ECB to apologise, I think that's a good start. But I think it's the regulatory stuff, the regulator and promoter confusion that's there, that needs to be changed. We need an independent regulator. And I think, there's stuff around, making kit and coaching free for kids that come into the pathway, and the pay structure with women's cricket. Even when I was briefed yesterday, I wasn't aware that England women have not played a test match at Lord's, and that's wrong. And that needs to change immediately.